because institutions shape memory. They decide what is preserved, what is canonized, and what is forgotten. Jazz institutions, archives, performance spaces, educational programs face similar challenges. Without support, the music risks being completely detached from living communities. I believe that advocacy reminds us that arts institutions are not neutral containers. They either reproduce inequality or challenge it. Supporting these institutions is not about diversity optics. It's about narrative sovereignty. I've tried to speak critically about this, not nostalgically, but ethically, with integrity and honesty, because I know what happens when narrative is defined by others outside of our community. Yet I remain hopeful. You being here for this Congress is a clarion call that gives me hope, because I understand that jazz has always thrived under pressure. The innovation often emerges from constraint. The younger artists are reasserting intention, blending genres, reclaiming lineage, refusing erasure. I also know that we need our elders, especially now that I'm considered one. Get that Grecian out for this damn man. Elders know that when we marginalize culture, we make decisions about whose lives matter and whose histories are disposable. Jazz history proves this. Theater history proves this. Black cultural history proves this. We also know that Black music has always traveled. Not because it is fashionable, but because it is truthful. It remains a language of freedom, adapted, transformed, localized, but still carrying the DNA of resistance and hope. From New Orleans to Cape Town, to Havana, to Paris, to Caracas. Jazz has migrated, morphed, and been absorbed around the world. It has always functioned this way, absorbing local traditions while retaining its core values of freedom and collective negotiation, and being absorbed into local traditions that then use its core values of freedom and collective negotiation. Jazz necessarily speaks across borders because oppression, as well as the tools to fight it, speaks across borders. Now let me say a word about the context of music today. We live in an era saturated with sound, but starved for listening. Music today is often flattened by algorithms that reward speed and repetition and familiarity. Jazz musicians feel this acutely. The music demands time, patience, flexibility, risk, and trust, qualities increasingly rare in public life. While algorithms reward speed, repetition, familiarity, jazz refuses that logic. Jazz demands patience, it demands risk, it demands presence. There's another reason why it's still important, why it resonates across geographic, language, and cultural boundaries, not just as an intellectual exercise in a music theory class, not as pleasant feel-good salves, but as metaphors and models for how to express humanity in ourselves and in others. Jazz teaches us how to be citizens, how to disagree without destroying the ensemble, how to leave space for others as a part of creating space for ourselves. This is not just musical training, but again, civic education. In a world addicted to certainty, jazz teaches humility. In a world addicted to noise, jazz teaches silence. In a world addicted to division, jazz teaches relation. We are living through a period of profound political anxiety, erosion of democratic norms, attacks on the truth, the defunding of public culture, the weaponization of identity. In this climate, artists are often told to stay out of politics. I reject that framing entirely. Remember that art has always been political. Art has always been political.
Amen.
Not because it endorses parties, but because it shapes perception. It humanizes complexity. It exposes power. This is critical for the reassessment and rebuilding that must take place in the coming times. I speak openly about voter suppression, racial injustice, cultural neglect, economic inequality, not as an activist who happens to act, but as an artist who understands that silence is also a political choice. Jazz history affirms this. From Billie Holiday's Strange Fruit to Nina Simone, the music has always carried critique, even when coded, ironic, or abstract. I stand squarely in that lineage. The artist's role is not to provide answers, but to ask better questions, and to refuse the erasure of history. For me, art is a form of calling, a responsibility to something larger than oneself. I see theater as a communal ritual and as a space where people gather to confront fear, grief, joy, and hope together. Jazz musicians understand this instinctively. The bandstand is not merely a professional space. It is sacred ground. This is sacred ground. It's where the listening becomes prayer. Improvisation becomes trust. Silence becomes meaning. And in a time of spiritual fragmentation, art becomes one of the few remaining places where people experience collective transcendence. Collective transcendence. We can remember how to be human together and act collectively for the benefit of all. So I say to you all, as I've said before, artists don't have to provide answers, but we must refuse lies. Yeah. That's our responsibility in this moment. In a fractured world, art becomes a meeting place. Art is not separate from life. It is how life explains itself. I believe strongly that artists are not merely creators, but caretakers. That institutions matter, that memory is a battleground, that joy is a form of resistance, that listening is political, that spirituality and justice are not opposites. So let me end where I began. Music and the arts still matter, not because they are pleasant, although they can be sometimes. They're gonna be swinging tonight. But because they are necessary, they carry memory, they defend dignity, they teach us how to listen, and when the music disappears, what follows is not silence, it is amnesia. And I have spent my life refusing to forget. I refuse to forget. I know this is a difficult moment. The country is fractured and good people feel exhausted. Listening is rare. And too often, let's be real now, being a jazz musician can feel like speaking a language fewer people are willing to learn. But I'm here today to say this to you as clearly as I can. Please don't stop trying to reach people. Don't stop building community. Don't stop teaching hearts and minds, because whether they know it or not, people still need what you do, especially now. Jazz has always been a model for democracy and community. You bring together individuals with distinct voices. You ask them to listen deeply to one another, to allow space for risk and disagreement. And somehow, through trust and discipline, you create something larger than any one person. That's not just music, that's a vision of what this country could still be. And every time you step onto the bandstand, this sacred and hallowed ground, you are rehearsing that vision in public. I know the economics are tough. I know the economics are tough. I know the audience can feel scattered. I know the culture rewards style instead of substance, and shallow coarseness instead of depth. But remember this, jazz has never thrived because it was easy. It survived because it was necessary. It survived slavery, segregation, neglect, commercialization, and erasure, because it spoke truth when truth was dangerous. You are heirs to that legacy. And with that legacy comes responsibility. And I've seen what happens when communities lose their music. I said earlier, I watched neighborhoods come back without their cultural heartbeat. Buildings stood, but spirits didn't. I learned then, and I carry it with me always, that culture is infrastructure. When you play in a neighborhood, you are not just performing, you are stitching people back together. You are reminding them that they belong to something larger than their fear. That matters more than you know. And if I may, consider reaching beyond the converted. In my work, I learned that invitation is critical. People don't fall in love with art because they are told they should. They fall in love because someone opened a door. You are the door openers. Your music can cross lines, politics cannot. It can reach places where language fails. It can humanize people who have been taught to dehumanize one another. This is no small thing in this moment. There's also a spiritual dimension to all this thinking that deserves a brief mention. Not doctrinal, not preachy, but deeply rooted in the Black church tradition where music, storytelling, and testimony converge. Jazz is faith in action. Faith that someone will catch you when you leap. Faith that listening will lead to understanding. Faith that even dissonance can resolve. Jazz encompasses the complex interaction of intellect and soul, of heart and head, and of knowledge and feeling. So musicians sit around discussing things like, what harmonic substitutions did they just play over that first 4 bars of rhythm changes? Or whether something is a dominant 7, flat 9 or sharp 11. Or did she just play an altered pentatonic scale? Does that move from the 1 to the 4 chord automatically? I mean, is that at least partial blues progression? If he played the tonic in the root of that chord, is that just considered corny now? I had to look all that shit up. No real music, I just played one on TV. Although deeply boring and possibly annoying to anyone who's not a musician or a jazz head, these questions can occupy cats for hours and speak and spark furious debates despite being irrelevant to whether a song or a solo evoked any emotion in the listener. This can make jazz feel like a formulaic science, devoid of anything deeper and intended for only a select few. In reality, jazz is only impactful when the elusive concepts of beauty and feeling and soul and other subtle notions are experienced. How the artist achieved this is not as important as did the artist achieve it. It typically doesn't even matter to the listener. That's why there are so many wonderful trained musicians coming out of the conservatory who are producing works that are technically perfect but not necessarily compelling. This is like political engagement. You can be completely knowledgeable and schooled on the particulars of policy development or the theories underlying a specific municipal action, but if you do not reach people on any spiritual level, they will not hear or believe you. And you definitely won't motivate them to action. In this way, the complexity of jazz and the arts mirrors that of political activism and spiritual enlightenment. Both require a deep intellectual approach and commitment to learning, coupled with an openness to feeling and experiential moments that are individual and hard to define for others. Now let me wrap this shit up and leave you with this. This nation does not need more volume. It needs more listening. And you, jazz musicians, you are practitioners of both, connecting and listening. So keep teaching and inspiring us. Keep practicing humanity and reminding us who we are and who we can be. Keep playing as if the country is listening, even when it doesn't seem like it is. Keep playing as if connection is possible, because it is. You prove it every night you take this stage, this hallowed ground. And our nation needs you more than it realizes. Keep swinging. Keep swinging. Keep swinging.
Uh-oh. Woo! Woo! Woo!
I think we can all thank Mr. Pierce for that incredible